To film or not to film? That is the question on The Question Is with Anthony Portantino. Like thousands of young people across the country who leave home for the Golden State, I came to California to be in the film business. But every day we read about runaway productions leaving California for other states. Folks, Hollywood is part of the fabric and folklore of our great state. How do we keep what we have here, and how do we bring back what we've lost? Film and TV productions are a source of great middle-class jobs and a boon to our economy. With us today are two industry leaders fighting to keep those jobs in California. Let's ask the question. Welcome to The Question Is with Anthony Portantino. On The Question Is today, we are going to talk about the film and television industry, a central part of the California economy. With me today, I have the executive director of the California Film Commission, Amy Lemish, and we have Ed Brown, who is the business agent for Local 44 of IATSE, which are the Prop Masters and Craft Service. Mr. Brown, tell us, everybody thinks it's Hollywood and it's the agents, the stars, the executives, but we're talking about thousands of rank and file men and women who make their living in this industry. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. When people think about Hollywood, and this is not just within the U.S., but around the globe, when people think about Hollywood, they think about red carpets, they think about glamorous, Hollywood champagne parties and so on. That's all that they really see. Really, the people that are behind the camera, the below-the-line workers, the people that make it all work, are much of like the people that I represent. I represent prop masters, all your construction trades, special effects, all your property crafts, set decorators. The prop makers that I represent are completely blue-collar workers. These are people that get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, put on 30 pounds of tools, kiss their family goodbye while their family is still sleeping, stand on their feet 12 to 14 hours a day on concrete stage floors, come home after a hard day's work to their family that is now gone to sleep again. This is truly hard labor. These are people that you don't see on red carpets.
Middle-class jobs.
Absolutely.
Middle-class jobs with health care benefits, the kind of jobs that every politician talks about wanting to have in their state and in their neighborhood, right?
Absolutely.
And that's the problem, because we have other states that are stealing our middle-class jobs.
We've experienced, I'd say, over the last decade at least, a drop in the retention of industry jobs within the state of California because of the aggressive stance by other states and other countries to basically steal our work, to steal our jobs.
Steal our infrastructure.
Absolutely.
Amy, do you want to tell us about what a couple other states are doing in that vein?
Sure. He's right. We've been experienced over the past decade, or actually a little bit before that, the phenomenon of productions leaving California to go to other regions to film. And the primary reason that they go to these other regions to film is because there are financial incentives that they can take advantage of by leaving. It started in Canada, and then starting in about 2003, it spread to the U.S., state by state, to the point where now we have 40 states in the country that are offering incentives to lure productions to their regions. So for instance, New York is a big competitor of ours. They were bragging about the record level of television production that they now have there. It's just through the roof. They don't have enough stage space available. Everybody's working. Louisiana, believe it or not, is probably the number 3 region in the U.S. right now. They started out with a nominal amount of production spending there back in 2003 when they started their program. And in 2012, they topped over $700 million in production spending. Georgia last year topped over $800 million in production spending.
And Georgia's going to be up in the ante even more. Aren't they building some more studios and doing some?
Yeah, that's the other risk that I always worry about that we face here is the growth of infrastructure that our competitors have, where they're building multi-stage studio facilities, which Georgia already has some, and Pinewood Studios out of the UK is coming in to build a multi-studio complex in Atlanta. It's happening all over the country.
Right, so Pinewood Studios, a historically important production facility, isn't choosing California to build its stages, it's choosing Georgia.
That's correct.
That's unconscionable. Ed, Amy talked about the infrastructure. You know, it used to be that your members would go on location.
Correct.
Now they're going on location and staying and moving.
There's, I would say right now, as far as my local is concerned, we have 6,000 members of our local. If you expand that to the West Coast, IATSE, there's about 40,000 people that are participating in all the locals. Of the 6,000 members that I represent, I've got hundreds of them literally on location all around the country, all around the globe, and a complete migration of my members who are Southern California residents of LA,
Right.
who call me all the time because they're on a distant location in Chicago, in Atlanta, and they want to stay because that's where the work's at. So we have LA residents that are just picking up and following the work. We used to use a lot of times as a joke the fact that the industry was made up of a bunch of carnies, that we were all a bunch of carnival workers. Well, it's not a joke anymore because we are turning into carnies. We now travel wherever the work goes. Families are split apart.
Right.
We hear about, divorces, mortgage implosion, cars repossessed. This is, it's really criminal that the state is allowing all of these jobs to flee from within our borders.
Now with that, we did have a little bit of good news in California. We did pass a tax incentive program, and Amy, you administer that program on behalf of the Governor's Office and the California Film Commission. Could you tell us what we've done so far? And I mean, it seems like economically we're talking about $600 million investment that's returning a $4 billion return on that investment. So it's a successful use of the state's resources.
Right. So in response to years and years and years of this, intense competition of productions leaving, the state legislature did pass our own incentive in California in 2009. And the California Film Commission administers that program, which we started in July of that year. And it's an enormous success for the lucky few.
Right.
So there is such high demand for the program that we actually conduct a lottery. On the first day of the fiscal year that we accept applications, we do a lottery system because there is overwhelming demand. So for instance, this year we had a record 380 applications of different projects hoping to film in California, submitting an application, and we have enough credits to accommodate about 45 on average per year. So the rest of them go on this massive waiting list, and they're, hoping that their number will get called up. But we have very, very high demand, needless to say. The program, what I was saying is, it's successful for those that do get in, and we are able to quantify what their spending is. So for instance, we have $100 million to allocate each fiscal year. So for every $100 million, it's about $800 million in production spending. These are all direct numbers. I'm not using any multipliers. This is what they're spending at vendors and payroll and rentals and that sort of thing.
Food.
And about, a lot of food and equipment and truck rentals and that sort
I'm
of
always
thing.
concerned about food. I have to, I am Italian and I'm not skinny, so food's important.
And about, of that number, $250 million of that is just in payroll to,
Right.
his members.
Right.
So it's very successful to the extent that we're able to accommodate productions that would like to be here.
Now, you talked about those numbers not including the multipliers, but when we actually look at overall economic benefit, the numbers are even better.
Sure.
I mean, you've got some
Well,
of those
there was a study that was done back in 2011 that analyzed the first 2 years of the program, and they determined in looking at the numbers that for every dollar in tax credit that is given out, that we get back $1.13 in state and local tax revenues.
So it's an investment that makes the state money.
Tax revenue.
Tax revenue.
That's correct.
But yet efforts to extend it and expand it have not always been well received.
That's correct.
That's
There have
correct.
been several efforts since the program started in 2009 because it was originally enacted as a 5-year program, and productions need certainty that the program is going to be there several years into the future for them to be able to do their production planning and really count on a program being there. So there have been several efforts to extend the program for an additional 5 years, and it's kind of been little steps. There was a 1-year extension, and then there was a 2-year extension. So it's been extended for a total of 3 years at this point.
And Ed, the Milken study, which you've read
Correct.
on analyzing the program, some of the statistics that have come out of that on expanding and instability, do you want to touch upon some of those?
I think, the Milken Institute did a study which showed economic growth in the states that have these tax incentive programs. And it's startling to see, for instance, New York comes immediately to mind on the benefits that are being reaped within the state of New York. Milken has proved through their study, the Ernst & Young study was also done, which also proved that the program works. Yet there are those people that have poo-pooed those studies and said that they were skewed and that they were not, not correct. I personally do not understand why they would say that. The numbers don't lie. The figures are there. When the program was instituted in 2009, I started tracking the number of jobs that were created, because for me, as a union leader, it's all about creating jobs for the members I represent. 2009, there were 1,200 members of my local that worked on tax incentive shows right away. Those are 1,200 people who would have otherwise sat at home. Now, if you take that and multiply that, if that number would have stayed static, which it's not, if you multiplied that by the 4 or 5 years that the program's been around, well, there's another 5,000 to 6,000 jobs that have been created. Imagine what we could have if we had a more lucrative program and competed on a level playing field with some of these other states.
And again, those are jobs with health care benefits.
Correct.
That support a family.
Correct.
Middle-class jobs.
Right.
That are also part of the fabric of California. Because
Exactly.
we're not talking about a new industry.
No.
We're talking about part of the Golden State's infrastructure.
This is, the film and television industry is pretty much the last indigenous industry in the state of California that's left. We all know what we've lost, aerospace, et cetera, the automobile industry.
Right.
We have to hold on to this industry because it is the foundation of the job infrastructure in California. Tourism is one of the biggest revenue drivers throughout the state. We're not talking just Los Angeles. I mean, all the way up to the Golden Gate Bridge. Tourism is a major revenue driver, and a lot of people come from all over the world for film and television.
Now, one of the biases out there is that it's a benefit for Los Angeles only. But as you know,
Right.
and Amy, you know, we film all over the state of California.
Correct.
How do we get people to understand throughout California that this isn't an LA issue, this is a California issue?
You want me to take that?
Go ahead.
I am asked that question a lot. And first of all, there's a lot of production in the LA area, but there's production all over the state. And historically, there used to be more production all over the state. What's really probably been hurt most is location filming outside of LA, because where we used to do Westerns in Bakersfield and Fresno, they'll go to New Mexico to do a Western before they will go
Or
to
Arizona.
Fresno. So that's really hurt the productions going outside of the LA area to a great extent. But when I was talking about for every dollar, the state gets back $1.13 in state and local tax revenues, those are tax revenues that go into the general fund. General fund to fund programs all over the state.
Right.
So I wanted to make another point about the infrastructure, which you touched on. When he talks about members that have to travel out of state to make their livelihoods, they're the lucky few that get taken out of state, because what we've been noticing is that when a production goes to, let's just, not to pick on Louisiana, but let's pick on Louisiana for a moment. The first couple years of their program, a lot of members would be taken from Los Angeles, but for each shoot
Now
that
they're
comes
not.
back, fewer and fewer people, they want to hire only locals. So they're
Right.
not bringing LA people for those jobs.
So the bottom line is other states are stealing our workforce, using them to train their local workforce, and not bringing those people back. When we come back, we're going to talk more about the production incentives. What can we do to make California more film friendly. People, including myself, I came here 20 years ago, over 20 years ago, to be in the film business. Are young people coming to this state anymore? We'll find out, and we'll see what we're going to do on The Question Is with Anthony Portantino.
Who needs this modern world? I can live just fine out here without the road rage and boy bands. Of course, I might miss my Charter HD with football on ESPN and Walking Dead on AMC. ESPN and AMC. And, well, Shark Week on Discovery HD. But that's all. AMC, ESPN, Discovery, TBS, and Comedy Central HD. But that's it. Except for HBO HD.
Charter now has over 100 HD channels and more brilliant HD shows on demand than ever.
We're back on The Question Is with Anthony Portantino. With me is Amy Lemish, who actually brought you A League of Their Own with Penny Marshall's production, and Ed Brown, who, you know, you were Pretty in Pink. You worked on that film back when I was a young film watcher and bought my, I guess it was $4 I paid at the time.
I was a young film worker.
You were a young film worker, and you were Pretty in Pink. We're talking about why it's important to film in California. We've got some successes. We've got some work to do. Amy, tell us about some of the recent successes of the program.
Right. So one of the types of productions that are eligible for our tax credit program are TV series that are on the air that are filming somewhere outside of California that wish to relocate back to California. We call that relocating TV series. So last year we had a series that applied, they got in the program, and they moved the entire production from Atlanta, Georgia to LA. This is it's called Teen Wolf. It's a very popular show for younger people, and but it's huge.
Remember Michael
they
J.
shoot,
Fox.
But this is a show that shoots 24 episodes a season, and they will spend approximately $40 million in one TV season, employing hundreds and hundreds of people and using hundreds of vendors. So
And
it's a big success for us.
We brought that back to
That's
California.
correct. That's correct. They moved here because of the program. A lot of shows do apply. They would like to move back to California, but if they don't get in the program, we're not able to get them.
Tell us about the accountability. I think, you know, one of the things that we fight is people don't understand tax incentives. They think it's somehow an expenditure. They don't see it as accountability. And frankly, they're right on some of them. I mean, there have been, the legislature has done a terrible job on some incentives where they put secret language into the bill where you don't know who gets the money, you don't know what industry gets the money, these late night deals. But the entertainment tax credit is completely and totally different and accountable. Walk us through why this is special.
Sure, yeah, we run a very transparent program, and I think it is confusing for a lot of people, how do these tax credits work. So the way our program works is when they initially apply and they get approved, they get really a reservation of tax credits. They get nothing from us except a piece of paper.
Right.
And then if they shoot their film and hire crew and pay their workers and complete everything, they have to complete post-production and then go through a very, very detailed audit, and we review that they've actually spent what they said they're going to spend, and we can verify all of that.
It's accountable.
Then they actually will get a tax credit certificate that they can then file with the Franchise Tax Board when they file their tax return. So, and then we share information with the Franchise Tax Board, so there isn't any sort of fraud going on, and we, you know, provide information on what those projects are and how much they're spending and how much their tax credit allocation was. So we try to be very transparent.
Yeah, one of my frustrations when I was up in Sacramento was we had efforts to shine the light on other tax credits, and those were always defeated. Here is the model citizen. Here is the one that is completely and totally accountable and transparent, but yet we still see opposition to this, to expanding it from those folks who think it's an expenditure and not focusing on
the revenue.
On the revenue side. Ed, you want to touch upon some of your advocacy efforts and how you're going around the state to try to get some political leaders outside of California to understand the investment nature?
I think, you know, one, we have to start with our immediate communities. We have to start with the people that live around us and understand the industry. And we need to have, the industry needs to have continued community support. When a film company, a television company comes into your neighborhood, you should embrace it. These are, you know, your neighbors, your friends you go to church with and play ball with, and understand that these are middle class jobs that keep the economy, not only in LA, but throughout the entire state, solid. I have gone to Sacramento. I've testified the State Assembly a few different times. You know, we have continuous meeting with legislators to get them to understand that it's not solely based in LA. This is not an LA issue. And to go back to something that Amy said, this is all feeds into the tax revenue pool of the entire state. We're taking meetings all the time. I'm going up to Northern California later on this week, hoping for a more lucrative program as we move into the 2014 legislative session. I think that things are a little more stable in the state.
Right.
I think that the opposition to this program is not as strong as it was, and I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll have success next year.
And the independent think tanks, the folks who have reviewed the program, their recommendations are to expand it to more productions,
Absolutely.
to change some of the eligibility requirements that favor only productions of certain sizes,
Correct.
to expand it to commercial production. I mean, all of the independent analysis is saying do more California.
That's absolutely correct. And you mentioned at the top of this segment that I did a big movie. You know, those kind of movies that I did are not done here in California. They're done outside of California. And the job numbers that those movies create, there's not an equality of what's going on. The kind of productions that we've got in California have a much smaller crew, much smaller number of jobs. The major productions that we see that are being done all around the country and all around the globe have 150, 200, 250 people working on that crew. Well, we've got, you know, the
And they
productions.
shoot for 100 days.
Yeah,
Right.
they do.
Right,
do.
versus 2 or 3.
That's correct.
But the Milken Institute says look at all of it. Look at the commercial as well as the big productions and hit the whole market with more incentives.
That's correct.
Right.
They recommend an expansion of the program. We're currently at $100 million a year. I think really, from where I sit, California needs to be on the same level playing field as New York.
Right.
These historically have been the production centers of the country, and again, I'm cautiously optimistic that that's what's going to end up happening come next year.
Now, we've talked about the tax incentive, but obviously that's one piece of making a state film friendly and attracting some of these businesses back. There's some other things that we are doing or can be doing that you want to touch upon.
Yeah, sure. We do stuff all the time to make California film friendly. I mean, that's really what my office is here to do, is to, you know, help productions that are here and make it easier for those that do want to shoot here. So we do all kinds of work with local municipalities, federal agencies to try to streamline the permit process, get people to reduce fees. You can't take a month to make a decision if you're going to let somebody shoot there. You need to turn things around in 3 to 5 days. We also have a network of regional film offices. There's about 50 of them in California, all the way from Humboldt County down to Imperial County, who we, in my office, work very closely with, coordinating and assisting productions. We just had a really big shoot. This was very, very rare, as Ed had mentioned. There was a film that came just for a week to film in California. The rest of the film is going to be in Atlanta, but they were in Mendocino County doing all kinds of driving shots on our beautiful roads, you know, highlighting our scenery. And that was a huge amount of coordination with CHP and Caltrans and other, you know, local agencies to make that happen.
Now, obviously in LA, there's a lot of talk about creating a film czar, making more film friendly rules and regulations. Are you interfacing with the Los Angeles mayor's office and permit office?
Sure. I work very closely with Film LA, which is really the film office for the city and county of LA, because we overlap a lot. So we have to coordinate, you know, very closely. And they've done enormous amount of work over the past 8 to 10 years to do just that, to make it really simple, streamline online permits, reasonable fees. And the city's done quite a lot, you know, to try to follow the state's model. The state doesn't actually charge a site rental fee if you want to be at a state park or some other state property. And the city did follow suit with allowing filming at some city properties without charging a fee, other than, you know, if you need a monitor or security guard or that sort of thing. So they've done quite a lot, and we work very closely with them.
I want to go back and touch upon something Ed said earlier. Years ago when I was scouting locations, I knocked on the door of a woman who was in her 80s, and she said, "Oh, I'm happy to have you because I want to make sure you stay here." She was just a retired lady who understood the importance of the industry and instinctively just said, "Yeah, use my house."
I love that lady.
Yeah, I actually went back to her a couple times, and she always said yes. She let us use her house, and I think that's also a piece of the sort of the esprit de corps of this industry that we have to extend from the rank and file, just average citizens, through their political leaders, because we do get pushback in Sacramento. We do get pushback because some folks just see this as a local LA issue. Right. They don't see the incentive as being important. They don't see the economic benefit. And frankly, a lot of that gets driven from the left, not the right, which, you know, as a Democrat, I find frustrating that we can't convince these folks that economic development is a viable way to create more opportunity to do more. And I know you fight that battle.
We fight that battle all the time, and I have to say, you know, that the California Film Commission and Amy's, you know, work through the state is wonderful. I mean, they extend every availability through the state to build production, to bring production here to California. We ran a program at our local where we invited people to come out and to contact their friends and family throughout the state of California. We set up some computers so they could put in zip codes and find out who their representatives were in Sacramento. And we did a handwriting letter campaign where they actually hand wrote on the outside of the letters the names and the addresses and so on. And when those representatives in Sacramento saw those zip codes and realized on that zip code, it said, wait a second, this is a constituent.
Right.
All of a sudden those envelopes got opened. And we encouraged them for community support across the Golden State, because it can't be just based in Los Angeles.
Right.
People all the way across the state have to respond and have to support the program.
Right, absolutely. Well, I know just in my, you know, back when I was in the business, I shot in Mammoth, I shot in San Diego, I shot in San Francisco, and I shot in LA, and I shot in a little town called San Juan Bautista on an American Playhouse. So just in my limited experience, was my introduction to the state of California. I got to see how beautiful and wonderful the state is. Amy, going back to the current program, this year there is no bill moving forward that the coalition is backing, and we're waiting to get the numbers to show again, make the case. Is that the argument?
That's right. There's no current legislation that's moving in the 2013 session, but you know, it's a 2-year bill cycle, so
Right.
I think we're going to see something happening in 2014.
In 2014, and so we want to get some more hard data to support the success of the program. Is that the thinking?
Well, it was also because last year in 2012 there was an extension to the program passed.
Right, for 1 year, right?
That was actually a 2-year extension.
2-year extension.
Right.
And so we want to get more data. We want to make the case that this is a sound investment for the California economy, certainly wrapped in the wonderful history of our great state. Any last thoughts, Ed? You want to talk to your craft, to the folks?
Actually, I think that it's, again, I don't want to belabor the point, but I think that the value of understanding that this is not a Hollywood issue, that this is a California issue, that these are middle-class jobs. And for those people that know somebody who work in the industry, I'd like you to reach out to those people and ask, how can I help? What can I do? Pick up the phone, write a letter to your legislators, hear your voice, get your voice heard up in Sacramento, that this is a viable program and that it's important to the entire state's infrastructure and that we need to keep it here. And we need to keep the jobs here. And we need to stop the thievery of middle-class jobs in the state of California.
Well, the question is film production in the Golden State of California. Young people for decades have been coming here because it is the mecca of creative entertainment talent. We're in danger of losing that. We are losing some of the infrastructure to other states, but there are real efforts that need support. The California Film Commission is doing a terrific job. The tax incentives make money for the state of California. If you're talking to your legislator or talking to people out there, spread the word, because California cannot cease to be the mecca it is. This is The Question Is with Anthony Portantino. Tune in next month. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.